I remember there was a particular mom. She didn't have only one kid with special needs. She had three kids with special needs. And she had a very calming presence about her. She was looking for a part-time job. And I asked her, why do you still want to work, right? And she said, I just want to have an identity beyond caregiver, right? It doesn't have to pay me that well, but I know that I want to have a different perspective. She left a very strong impression on me. And then I realized this is what it is.
Hello and welcome to Make It Work, the bi-weekly podcast where we uncover inspiring stories of modern working mamas in Asia who have redefined their career paths whilst putting family first.
Hey, hi, Sher-li.
Hi, Sarah.
So good to have you. I have looked at our records and I see that I first reached out to you more than a year ago. So it's a long time coming that you are on Make It Work. So very, very excited. And as I always do with every guest, please tell us about you and your story under 2 minutes, if possible.
Sure. So hi, I'm Sher-li. I'm the founder of Moms at Work, as well as a subsidiary called Korean Navigators. On the personal side, I'm a mother of two. They're pretty grown up now, a 16-year-old girl and a 12-year-old boy. I also run Moms at Work, and I, on the side, also am an adjunct lecturer with one of the polytechnics in Singapore. I started Moms at Work about 14 years ago, mainly because I became a mother. I realized that women get very stretched between trying to balance work and family. So for that reason, I thought, hey, maybe there are other mothers like myself. And that's how I got Moms at Work started. Since then, we've grown quite a bit. We have about 68,000 member moms now. And we run various different events throughout the year. This year, however, is a little bit challenging for me because I'm really being stretched. I'm tutoring, going through national big exams, and I'm trying to manage that as a mother and also run Moms at Work because we've expanded to Japan. That's a new market that we've gone into this year as well. So very happy to be here and very happy to share more thoughts and maybe perspectives with everyone.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much, Sher-li. Yeah, wow. 2 kids going through the O-levels and then PSLE, and then you're also having to travel. So maybe this is a good segue. Tell us what a day in your life looks like now.
I think to be honest, I have never had a very set pattern of how my day goes. There's always a caregiving element. And what I do is I try to plan my work schedule around my children. When they were younger, especially when they were in primary school, I always made sure that the afternoons were kept as free as possible. The mornings are really jam-packed. As they got older, they got a little bit easier. But also, I am someone that works well late at night. So sometimes when the children will sleep, even to this very day, that's when my brain goes into overdrive. And I get really excited about projects that I've taken on, and I will do them usually at night. So my day starts on certain days very early, but maybe if I'm fetching the kids to be 6, if my husband helps out, then I'll start a little bit later, about maybe close to 8. And then it's pretty much runs all the way till 1 or 2 sometimes. Yeah, I am a night owl, unfortunately. That's pretty much in a day. It's interesting because if you were to look at my schedule, I have what I call family time, meaning that I really put that aside, and that's my time with my children, whether it's to fetch them for classes or to work with them, to their homework, or even like now it's oral exams, going through oral questions with them. And then I have what I put as purple or red, which is the work commitments that I have. And then I have another one, which is green, and that's more for the volunteer work that I do. So because I do a lot of voluntary work with ministries in Singapore, if I'm teaching for that term, I also have another one, which is blue, and that's for teaching, that's set up for my 4 hours classes in school, for example. So it's very interesting because I always joke that my calendar is very, very colorful, but it also shows me that really different pockets. And I'm a big believer, like a lot of mothers, in segmenting out my time to the different responsibilities I have as well.
Yeah, I think calendar kind of scheduling and blocking is something I've heard as a constant hack and a tip for very busy lives.
Yeah.
What else do you have as hacks, or what is a non-negotiable that really allows you to do all the things that you do?
I don't think I have what I call non-negotiable. Okay, so I'm quite type A. So I think when my first child was born, my previous roles, I was very much like, we have to do it by this time. There's no compromise. But like all mothers, after you give birth, you realize that if you don't want to be flexible, the children will make you flexible, right? Meaning that there's always things where you didn't plan for it and it's going to cost. So what I would say is that I have a lot of backup plans. So if I plan something for a certain time, and I know, Sarah, you probably got it from me where I fell sick or somebody fell sick at home, I would then have to always be ready to adjust accordingly. I find that actually lessens stress for me as a working mom. The earlier old me would be very much like, I don't care, I have to make sure we get this done. And like I said, because of children, you realize that they work on their own time, their own schedule. So you have to be more fluid. Secondly, also, I think because I run my own business, I realize over time that if I'm not fluid enough, I actually face more challenges, right? I find it very interesting because people tell me, oh, you should have all these like non-negotiables too. I suppose I still do have some of it, but over the years, I've become a lot more, I come to embrace things are very negotiable. And I also say this, I think asking for help when I need it has been very, very useful. With work, obviously asking for help from my colleagues, and I have wonderful colleagues. If I sound like I'm a bit stressed, like this morning I was a little stressed, some of the colleagues I work with, they will pick up the stress and they realize, oh, it's getting a bit overwhelmed. And I think that is something that we mutually all support each other as a team. I think when we recognize that someone in the team is probably not able to commit at that moment, there's no pressure. There's this understanding that she's a mom, it's a tough time for her. I'll back off and I'll support her. I'll do take on whatever. So asking for help at work has been useful, but also asking for help at home, right? My husband travels quite a bit because he's in the airlines industry. So, but there are certain days that I know I have to commit to a particular event, a particular meeting. So I'll let him know beforehand and I say, please mark down that day. Ideally, when you plan your work trips, just avoid that timing if you can. Or if I cannot, then the kids have certain things that they can take on. As they get older, they get tasked as well. So I think what's interesting for me is really that over the years I've learned if I ask for help from the people around me, things actually flow better. So it's less about, because I like structure, I like organization, but there are times where I just cannot commit and it's about asking someone else to support me rather than I'm going to go at it alone, right? So this is something that my older self is probably, if I could live my life 15 years ago, I would be a bit more kind to myself. Yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, I think running your own thing is very tied to wanting that control and making sure things are going to your expectations, right? So I'm sure learning to let go and having others step in is a big part of growing as a sort of entrepreneur.
And also as a mother, you can't control your children's personality. You can shape up their habits just to an extent, but if they're really messy, and I'll tell you this as a teenager, a mom to teenagers, if they're very messy, they will try their best to be organized, but inevitably it will go back to what is their messy side. So there are some things that I think it's the beauty of it as well, right? You only learn as you get older. Otherwise, if you refuse to learn, that's when life keeps giving you lessons again and again. It's actually the same at work. If you're going to meet certain clients, like you meet certain employers who are very set in their ways, and trying to change them doesn't, you keep going at it and trying. And you find that because they don't want to change certain ways, they meet roadblocks. But over time, if they start to let go and change certain ways of running, even hiring campaigns, for example, they get better at it. And then they realize that, okay, it's really a lesson I learned. So I think this whole 14 years, both as a mom and as a business owner and running a social organization more than anything else, I think it's really about that idea that when things happen, you have to learn to ask for help and learn to let go or change what you can. Don't go at it and keep pushing at it because it's not going to get anywhere until the time is right, until the situation changes.
Yeah, wise words.
Sounds like something. It's so many pain points that after a while you realize that's it, right? If you don't do it, it's going to come again. I think interestingly, it's the same with parenting children. Sometimes they will fight you tooth and nail about something, and rather than go hard at it, it's saying that, can I slowly shape you to have the right habits? Can I slowly find the ways to solve the problems that you have? And I think that's the most beautiful part about parenting, that you're forced to be better in a way.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Forced to be creative, forced to let go, but not totally step back, but I guess, sometimes it requires that, but to let it work as natural course, okay, he doesn't want to wear, protective gear. Sometimes he just has to fall and bruise.
Yeah. There's certain battles to, my late mom used to say, there's certain battles you fight and there's certain battles that you have to let go because it's a personal lesson for the person involved as well. So in this case, our children, right? Or even our spouses, right? So I think that's something that I'm still struggling with it, obviously, because I was so much of a type A beforehand. But really with time, you realize you can't do anything about it.
Actually curious about that point. How do you get maybe inspiration, or do you have role models or books or resources, things like that? Or is it more learned experience?
What has really inspired me over the last 14 years are actually sometimes the women that we support. So I love the events we run because I get to meet them. They share amazing stories of some are incredibly strong women. I remember there was a particular mom, she didn't have only one kid with special needs. She had 3 kids with special needs and different types of special needs. She had a very calming presence about her. And I remember she came for an event and she said she was looking for a part-time job. And I asked her, I said, why do you still want to work, right? And she said, I just want to have an identity beyond caregiver, right? It doesn't have to pay me that well, but I know that I just want to have a different perspective. And she left a very strong impression on me. And that was quite an early experience. I think that was in 2011 or 12, very early. And then I realized this is what it is, right? I think when women stop work and they come back into work, it's not always just about income or ambition. It's the fact that you know that you have an identity beyond caregiving and you would like to find that identity again, right? And I think that shaped me quite a bit. It made me realize, okay, this is what it is all about. Actually, when you say we're trying to push for that balance, why do women push for it so much? It's really because you realize that I don't really thrive with a particular identity that I used to have, right? So that's one. And then, of course, I also have what I call role models because they are women who, because of the challenges they face, I start to hear things that I realize, okay, this is why it shouldn't be. So I remember in 2015, we had a big career fair and it was a lady who came up to me. She was very put together and she said to me, you know, I quit for my son because my son is taking his PSLE. So I've quit, so I'm coming back to work, which is fine. And then her next line really, it just blew my mind. She said, I quit my job to look after my son during the PSLE time. So he better do well. And it really helped to me because it made me realize this is again my point that when we have all these expectations of ourselves and it doesn't get fulfilled for whatever reason, we transfer on the expectation, right? So it made me, even to a large extent, want to do what I do more because I realized that a lot of this was a fear. It didn't come from anger or anything. It came from fear. She had left her job. She felt that she cannot come back in. It was fearful to her. And then if you're afraid, your next best thing is to find the easiest way to transfer that fear. And then it became, I want my son to do that because he's a report card from my work. You see what I'm saying, right? Which I then thought, oh, okay, it shouldn't be like that. So, of course, I can't say this to all the women, but I always explain Moms at Work as being sort of a community of possible that gives you all the options available. You know, if you want to continue working in a flexible way, if you want to start to run your own business from home because you enjoy it and gives you an identity and you love being an entrepreneur, we support you. And then if you obviously want to stop entirely and you want to come back in, we have all these return to work campaigns and returneeships that we run companies, right? So what I'm trying to say here is that if you think about it, there's no excuse for the choices that we make as a mom. It's really about us. What's the decision that I've made for myself? So just now to your point, do I have role models? I find that it's really the women I meet every time, you know, through our events. And then the obviously stories about how they're older. They inspire me. They get me thinking, okay, what else can I do? So I remember when we launched Singapore 40 over 40, more than 4 years ago now, it started because some women came up to me and they were quite young. They were in their late 40s, right? You won't think that's a retirement age. But they were trying to come back into work and they were told at interviews very subtly that they were too old to learn new things. And I thought, this is a bigger societal issue. It's about ageism, right? So then I said, okay, you know what? I'm quite tired of hearing about Forbes 30 under 40. I mean, I love the idea of it. But you think about it, when you're in your 40s, it is harder. You have family, you have you have health challenges, everything comes in. And yet you're brave enough to restart a job. You're brave enough to change a career path entirely. You're brave enough to even start a business in some ladies in their 50s. And I think that should be celebrated, right? So that's why we created Singapore 40 over 40 and we run it every 2 years now. But it's a bit to my point about how, because somebody's story then gave me reason to think about it and say, what is the bigger challenge here and how can we then do something about it? Right?
I really resonate with what you're sharing about that internal mindset shift that is required to be at peace with a different identity, right? Especially as a mom. And what you talked about with the 40 over 40, putting these lesser heard stories of other, kinds of role models or different success stories that aren't the conventional, left school, drop out, a unicorn founder or something as like success stories in their own right that we, I guess, don't see as much of because of maybe the societal sort of bias towards youth.
Also, because I always joke that it's not a sexy enough story for media to pick up. Yeah. The day-to-day is mundane, but sometimes the day-to-day is also what helps us get by. Because sometimes I think it's challenging to constantly have the picture of someone who is so successful, they do everything and they look amazing on Instagram or Facebook, but the truth is we don't, right? You wake up making a mess. We have our mess days, right? And I think it's something that I personally am a big believer of, because I identify better when people are real like me, right? So that's why your question about role model was so impactful for me, because
Yeah.
to a certain extent, that's what it is, right? It's that everyday woman who tries to survive and get by and does well for herself by her standards that I think deserves to be heard. They are inspiration, right, in their own right. So I think if I had my way, I wish there was more focus for this, because otherwise people just feel like there's this huge, very far range goal that I have to achieve as a working mother. And it's really hard because not all of us have the same support system. Not all of us have the same bosses. Not all of us have the same ability as well. I mean, and sometimes we just don't want to have that ability. I mean, I can travel nonstop for work and rush from job to job. But the question then becomes, does that make me happy? Does that make me comfortable with who I am? And I think that is something that I would like very much for people to think about. It's not what other people do. It's about what you do for yourself and your family and the people that matter.
Amazing. I think if we can dive a bit deeper into more of your personal story, I want to hear, if you can think of any difficult times you experience, whether as a mom or as an entrepreneur, or even the intersection of those. Yeah, wait, I know you've mentioned before that you've burnt out a few
Yeah.
times. Could you share a little bit on those? Bring us back to those times and, what got you out of it? How did you work it through?
So I think on a personal front, I have shared this before, but I'll share with you as well. I was pregnant with my second child when my mom was fighting cancer. And very sadly, she passed away just before my son was born. And I was very close to my mom. So it was interesting because you obviously have grief and you've lost someone very dear. And at the same time, you have happiness because you're giving birth to life, right? I mean, that was, and it took me a long time. And I'm one of those people where under tremendous amount of stress, I actually one of the things I tell my kids is always, what's the problem? Let's solve it, right? I find solving problems my default way of coping with anything, with challenge, with stress. And so one of the things I did was I remember I focused on, trying to have the baby, push moms a bit further. I did a lot of things. And I think 6 months in after the baby was born, I think that's when it finally came crashing down because I was going, right? And it's interesting because nowadays we talk about mental health, mental wellness after birth.
Yep.
I don't know if it was postpartum depression because it was all rolled into one. But during that period of time, there were a lot of fights. I even argued with my dad because we were both grieving at that time, obviously. And I recall, so eventually I went for counseling with my husband because we quarreled. But I knew something was wrong because it wasn't it wasn't normal. We didn't quarrel that way. And I remember the counselor said to me, "Oh, you know what? The big thing here is you've lost your mom and you haven't dealt with it." And I think sitting in that room and crying was very therapeutic because you finally realize, again, because I'm a problem solver, what is wrong? Why are things wrong, right? I realized instead of allowing myself to grieve, I focused on embracing that I'm giving birth and so on, right? And I think after that, things started to flow again. But it was very interesting for me because then I realized there's certain emotions as a mother that or as a woman or what have you, I think you don't feel. You have to let it come. And the more you try to fight it, I think for some people, they're like, we're talking about, of course, this is novel, we let it flow. But for me, I didn't let it flow. And it took me quite some time to finally come to terms with it. And I remember that period of time was the only time I remember writing to all the moms at work members and saying, I'm taking a short break. I'll come back, give me about maybe 4 to 5 months and just cut everything off. And obviously, because I just given birth on top of that, it was helpful that I stopped there. The only thing I didn't stop was I continued lecturing because it was a very different part of me, right? That was a very interesting, it was probably the first time I recognized there are things called postnatal depression, there are things called grieving. And when you have everything together, you can't function, right? You really cannot function. It may look like you're going through the motions, but if you don't sit down to process it. And then once that was done, I felt like emotionally everything was a lot smoother. Of course, there are always ups and downs, but I never hit that all-time low where, I really felt like I was just going through the motions and I even questioned, why am I alive every day? I don't enjoy being alive. So it was actually depression. I remember she said, grief and postnatal depression all rolled into one. And actually, I remember this very clearly. She said, you are quite amazing to be still here. And I thought, you mean I think we would have jumped out. But I think it came to a point where she realized it's quite extreme emotions to be feeling at the same time. And it's quite amazing that you kept it in, kept it going. So that was on a personal front. On the work front, every few years I will have it where I question, am I doing the right thing, right? And it always happens when I'm overworked, like I'm pushing myself too far. And I question, am I doing the right thing? Why am I doing this? Is it making enough money to be sustainable? Am I doing things that I truly care about? And after so many cycles of it, the good news is I found out that a lot of entrepreneurs go through it. So I thought, okay, I'm normal. But what has always helped me is I do journal, not every day. I'm not one of those that can journal every day. But when things are bad, I have to write it out. It is very therapeutic to talk it out or write it out. But talking it out sometimes is tough because I fall off tangent, and when you're writing, you can go as off tangent as you. So I find that very useful as well. Another thing that I find is because by nature I am like a problem solver. Once I have a focus on there's something to be done, I actually perk up and I feel like, okay, I can do this, right? And then I'll keep going and then I'm back. So it's not something that I would recommend for everyone. It's just the way I am. And knowing that this is how I operate has been very useful because I didn't know that in order to pull myself out from that kind of, that visual cycle. I wouldn't say cycle because it doesn't last very long for me. Frankly, it lasts more than 1 week. Yeah, I think the longest was 2 weeks one time. Yeah, I don't want to do anything. But but once I have that whole action mode, it's like a different part of me turns on and then I'm able to keep going. And I downplay the emotions and then they don't surface again for a long time.
Yeah.
So, but again, this is not for everyone, right? This is just something that works for me. And one of the things I've learned over the years, even when I was very young, is, and as a mom, I always advise people to know this, really come to terms with your own emotions, your own thoughts, your own, not what people. You have to be very clear about who you are and what you want from life and what you want from your role as a mom or working adult. So even when you work for someone, it's the same thing, right? It's, what do I want? Like when I'm lecturing, I take on teaching assignments. That's when I'm an employee, right? And I'll ask myself the same thing. What do I want? Do I want this for arrangement? I remember working one time for a very short time with a very established organization for lecturing as well. I just went in there for a couple of lectures and then they offered me the role and I said no eventually because again, same thing. Was it what I want? How they're executing me? Is it something that aligns with what I want to do as a lecturer? And it's not, then I'm out of here. So when I have that clarity, then it becomes very easy to execute, right? But if I don't have that clarity of what I want, then I'm constantly being bombarded by people telling me, oh, why do you want to leave this? Why do it's actually a good gig, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of self-reflection, growth to journaling as well, that you've come to where you are to be able to maybe easily say no to things that are pulling at you.
Yeah, I mean, I still make mistakes. I still say yes to things which I probably always regret later. But I do it less now. I do it more with the idea that, okay, something that I don't want to do. I don't like to do it. And more importantly, I don't see myself adding value to whatever the project is, or I don't see the project adding value to both groups, right? Then I have to say no to it. Right? So it's the same with doing volunteer work at the ministries. There are ministries that come that I feel, yes, it's aligned with what I see. It can create impact. And then the ministries that come and I'm like, I have nothing to do with this sector of the society. So I don't think I should be involved, right? So I set off, knowing your own inner compass. And it changes all the time, right? So being very aware of it helps a lot. Then whatever goes on around you, what you say or what is trend, like, doesn't have an impact. Because this is it. This is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. This is how I want my life to be.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And that was part 1 of our interview with Sher-li Torrey, founder of Moms at Work and Singapore's 40 Women Over 40 Award. Stay tuned to part 2 of our conversation where we talk about personality tests, childcare policies, and perceptions of working moms in different Asian countries. You won't want to miss it.
Thank you for listening to Make It Work, where we uncover inspiring stories of modern working mamas in Asia who have redefined their careers whilst putting family first. Please help others discover the show by leaving a review and rating on wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok. Meanwhile, here's to you, making it work.